Welcome everyone to this week's Global Intelligence Update. And as always, we've got a great guest with us this week. Yeah, you heard right. We've got two guests with us. This time joining in, we've got Ian Hatton and Marie-Thérèse Roux. Let me give you guys a quick introduction before we jump into the session. It's going to be packed with some good questions, some great insights and answers. But Ian and Marie have spent over a century between them identifying and exploring the principles of relationship at work across the planet. Ian liberates leaders with his keynotes, facilitation, and his first book, Lead Like Morpheus, the genius of conscious leadership. Marie empowers experts, entrepreneurs, and enthusiasts globally to live their visionary message. As speakers and mentors, they have earned respect in their own rights internationally. They have combined expertise, spanned the fields of leadership, communication, and most significantly, the never-ending inner journey of self-discovery. The result is an ongoing conversation that invites you on a quest to elevate the quality of our relationships at work, in life, and with self. Guys, welcome to the session this week. Really stoked to have you here. Hope you guys are doing great.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be here and great to see the Circle of Excellence again.
Yeah,
Mm. Yeah, it's good to be here as always. This feels like family.
it's great to hear. So, guys, we're going to jump in straight into the session. And if you're just joining in or you're watching offline, the topic today is partnership. And let me jump straight into it. Ian, what would you say? What are the advantages of partnership in businesses?
Yeah, you've probably all heard Lundy especially, but probably Mike as well, talk about 1 + 1 is 11. The whole concept, you bring the two ones together and you've now got 11. And it's something that I truly believe in and have believed in for more than 20 years now because we all are unique and we have unique strengths. So if we can partner well around those strengths, and many of us partner poorly, but if we partner well around those strengths, we can actually complement. So if I've got a zone of genius and Marie's got a zone of genius, and I have a bunch of weaknesses and Marie has a bunch of weaknesses, maybe together we can achieve so much more. And that's this bigger game, I guess.
Guys, I just saw Marie giggle there. Just want to give you a heads up. So I've been warned before that they might just talk over each other. I need to kick one of them. So that's what my initial thought was now. Just having a look at your giggle on that. Just waiting for that moment to get in. Uh, Great answer. Thanks, Ian. Marie, is there anything you'd like to add on to that? Was that a complete answer?
Well, first of all, do I have the all clear? Great. So, in the spirit of 1 + 1 = 11, I would like to echo so much of what Ian said. But of course, we wouldn't be demonstrating 1 + 1 = 11 if there weren't something different from my side to add. And I think the key to that is where Ian said, some of us partner well, some of us do not always partner so well. But now, what's the secret here? Because if I was born to not partner well, which by the way, I definitely used to think I was. Like I really stand strong, I do things in my own right, and I can always do it better, right? Right. The only thing is, I can't do it all. And there are strengths that I do not have. So in my case, 1 + 1 = 11 is really about that skill of learning to make that relationship, that partnership, whether it's professionally or personally, work. And the good news is, if like me, you were born with a kind of a deficiency and raised in an environment where you were encouraged to just do things on your own, there actually is hope because, yes, you can do things wonderfully, but you're still just one on your own. And I think one of the things that Ian has demonstrated to me, and that's why we've recorded these principles of relationship at work, is really that the +1 of somebody else can make you more than just two. It really is the 11 because you cannot do everything on your own. We all do have weaknesses, and we also only have 24 hours in our day. So it's a lot more than just you and that other person. It's really the magic that happens, and that is exactly what we'd love to share today.
Yeah, that's such a great answer and explanation on that. And it actually leads on to my next question, which is,
Chris,
how do
can
you,
I interrupt you now? I'm going to speak
yeah,
over you.
I've been warned.
You were warned, but I thought it might be useful just to give an example because I think maybe it
Yes.
makes it much more practical and real if we can add an example. So, one of the things that Marie and I co-developed starting 3 years ago, well, nearly 3 years ago, next month it'll be 3 years, is what we call our leadership egg assessment. And this was something that came out of a wrestling through one of our programs and what do we need and so on. And it's really come to a whole new level in the last few months. Now, by the way, we've actually got a new assessment that we're going to share with you a little bit later on. But this one is an existing assessment. Many of you would have done it or heard of it already. But it's called the Egg 3 Leadership Assessment. And we've recently created what we call the focus report for this assessment. So it's a 10-page, quite detailed. And what happened here is that there was a lot of technical stuff in the background, and that's kind of my forte. So I've added Zapier so that we can process the data. I mean, this is quite technical. Changed the scoring mechanisms and everything because we realized that it wasn't highlighting things exactly the way it should for our clients and all this. So we've done a lot of back end work on the assessment. But I speak reasonably well, but Marie has a way with words, the written word. And it's actually a total zone of genius. She is an incredible linguist, and most of you will know this already, just having listened to her. But when she does it in writing, it's even better. And so she has done a lot of the report and the refining of the report. I've done a lot of the back end work. We've collaborated on the objective, what we're trying to achieve with the clients, and the debriefs and the value that we add. So there's pieces that we've done together. There's pieces that we've done separately. But the net result is that we truly believe that we now have a totally world-class assessment that is changing lives in business and helping people to understand their entire leadership team. So if you go through like an entire executive team or an entire leadership team of an organization, and they now understand exactly where they're at, and we're starting to see the results of that. So that collaboration would never have been possible. I could never have achieved what we've achieved on my own, and I think Marie couldn't have achieved it on her own. But together, it's at a completely different level than we could have imagined.
Wow, that sounds great. I look forward to seeing that assessment, Ian.
Hmm.
That's really good. The last one was already very good. So seeing improvement on that, that's pretty awesome. So yeah, that leads then on to my next question. And thank you for the explanation there, Ian. That was it's pretty detailed, really images it out. So my next question is then how would you find or identify the right partner to help in your business to excel? That's the big question majority of people ask. How?
Mm. I'll take that one. And there are so many criteria that we like to have. If you're having some kind of business training, you might be looking into models, people with different personalities. You are maybe thinking of roles. Maybe you need a CEO and a CFO and a COO and a CIO and all these C-suiters, or at least the people who aspire to that if you're still starting out. And a very common or popular idea at the moment is the visionary versus integrator. And that's also a helpful way of thinking of things. But ultimately, even if you have a fantastic checklist of what your wish list is of the perfect business partner, there's a question that you might be skipping here, and it's the most fundamental one. And by the way, this is as true, if not even more true, in personal relationships as it is in business. And that is, have you become the right partner? Or more importantly, are you in the ongoing process of becoming the right partner and being the right partner? In a business, the business cannot work if you are not the fullness of who you can be as a business partner. And that does not mean fulfilling a wish list. It has a lot more to do with really tapping who you are. And that brings us to the matter of genius that we'll be speaking about later. And Ian, I wonder if I've left anything out there because I think you must be itching to get in.
So it's not so much that I'm itching to get in, but I want to just add a little bit of humor to this as well. And that is that the discovery of this for me happened about 20 years ago. In fact, it probably first started nearly 30 years ago when various colleagues and people, and it was still when I was in the IT industry, kept looked asking me like, female friends saying to me, where do I find Mr. Right? And they're going along, or some guy says to me, where do I find this woman of my life, this woman of my dreams, and all the rest of it? And it very quickly emerged that I began to give a standard answer, and that is stop looking for Mr. Right, become Miss Right. Stop looking for, Miss Right, become Mr. Right. And it's just incredible how when we invest in ourselves and we discover who we really are and we grow that, because a lot of what we have is raw talent and it needs knowledge and skill and shadow work and all sorts of things for it to come to its full fruition. But being on that journey, and just to be clear, it's not about arrival. This is not about, well, until I'm perfect, I can't find this partner. But it is about the more we realize that another person can't fulfill us, we need, even in business, we need to become the fullness of what we can be, and that will attract the right kind of partner.
Wow. Great answer. Thanks, Ian. Really, really good answer on that one. Then I'll jump into my next question. But before I do that, chat, if anyone online wants to ask any questions, you guys are more than welcome to put it in chat or unmute yourself when we're done with the questions. But please, you guys are more than welcome to pop anything in chat there. Then on to my next question, which is another big one, is how do we ensure that you make the most out of each partner's talents and mitigate their weaknesses?
I'm going to start there with a little tale on our previous point of becoming. So what you'll find out at the end of our session today is that all this is part of our Sun relational blueprint. So this relational blueprint is 12 principles of relationship at work, as you've heard a little bit about in Chris's introduction. And the first one of those principles is becoming. So it is very much becoming the right, the partner, but the fullness of who you are. Even if you're alone in your business or if you're alone in your life, it's really about that becoming. And this answer to Chris's question now of um, how do you make sure that you make the most of the weaknesses and or the strengths and mitigate the weaknesses? That is a principle that we call discovery. And the discovery is really about finding another person's genius. And how can you do that if you haven't found your own? So, those of you who know Ian or who followed his work will know that genius is a big, big thing for him. And maybe, Ian, you're the best person to explain what genius means to you, and also that fact that the big light of genius also casts a shadow of a weakness, and that is how we find those strengths and mitigations.
Yeah, thank you. There's so many facets of this, and I could go on for hours just on this point. But let me start with trying to define a little bit of what I mean by genius. Is that the reality is that our brains are wired uniquely. And by the way, this is not limited to brains. This is also intuition and emotion and physicality and heart and beliefs and all of these things. But if we just took the brain element of uniqueness, 85 billion neurons approximately, probably a little bit less, a little bit more, depending on who you are. Each neuron can support up to 15,000 connections to other neurons. Typically, it's a lot less, but up to 15,000. It's typically about 2,000 or 3,000 that are actually active. But it can be up to 15,000, which means that the potential uniqueness of the wiring of your brain is 85 billion to the power of 15,000, or if we bring it down to the smaller number, to the power of 2,000. So that's 85 billion times 85 billion times 85 billion, 2,000 times. I mean, that is just such a big number. That's more than the stars in the universe. It's just an incredibly, incredibly large number. So there is nobody else who is like you. You are unique. And that means that we each have something to offer the world that is unique. And this offering to me is a big part of answering this question around discovery and appreciation. So let me give you a specific example. Yeah, the snowflake is another example of that. We know that each snowflake is unique, and that's just crazy. It's crazy. It's insane, you know. So the I want to give you a specific example, and this is about teaming because this I think what we're talking about today is partnership is a form of teaming, and and this was Marcus Buckingham who highlighted that the plan A of teaming is not do whatever it takes. That's always the plan B. The plan A of teaming is everybody offers their strengths to the purpose of the team. And so this idea of discovering what we actually have to offer is a massive thing for me. So let me give you, and then of course, plan B is, okay, we can do whatever it takes. And let me use a silly rugby example. I think Mike would appreciate this. And that is that, you know, if you compare typically the size of the prop forward and the scrum half, they are very, very different. The one is small and agile, and the other one is big and strong. You do not want the prop forward playing scrum half. Neither do you want the scrum half playing prop forward. You would fail as a team. But every now and then there's a loose scrum, okay? And sometimes the scrum half is underneath that loose scrum, and the prop forward happens to just arrive at the right time to receive the ball and play it. So you do that in teaming, but it's always plan B. And so plan A is always everybody offers their strength. And the first time I applied this, I was my first major score I ever did in, it was a big project for Accenture on leadership succession. And this was back in 2007. It's a long time ago, but it was the biggest project we'd ever done. And we put the team together and we sat in a room and we said, okay, this is clearly what we're trying to achieve. This is the purpose of this team. But before we map out what those tasks are, will everybody has a turn to offer their strengths to that purpose. And the one person said, well, I want to be the person who does all the coaching. And the other person said, I want to do all the admin around the reports to make sure that part runs well. And everybody volunteered their strengths to this project. And we looked at the end, once everybody had volunteered their strengths, and there was nothing left that needed to be done. Every single facet of the project was now covered. And that project, the client said to us afterwards that we over delivered by at least double what they expected, because everybody brought their strengths to it. And the result was at a completely higher level. So we need to learn and make space for each other's strengths and to articulate our weaknesses so that we can mitigate that between each other.
Wow, great explanation on teaming. And you know, with all the things that we've spoken about, everything sounds great. But what about the potential risks and pitfalls of partnerships? Can anyone give me an answer on that one?
Very, very important question. And of course, it's unrealistic with all the benefits of what a partnership can potentially be, especially for a business, that we can easily overlook what if it goes wrong, especially if you get on like a house on fire from the start, right? That is a major risk. So what are the risks of a partnership? Well, one of the biggest risks is, these things that we say about assumptions. There are a lot, there's like assumptions are a minefield. And the trouble with assumptions is that we don't express them. So I don't say what I assume, you do not say what you assume. And the next thing we know, we have a dissatisfaction, disagreement, and all of this. And I see there's a question from Karen in the chat. Thank you, Karen. Who's speaking about the alignment of values and how these, how this can be a problem. Also, when you think about your own experiences. So hopefully, Karen, this is going to help. And that is, how do we express those values? And in our Sun Relational Blueprint, what we call that is, first of all, our agreements. We articulate, first of all, and then we talk about agreements. So articulating is all about three magic words that Ian taught me very early on when I met him. And these three words are transformative, and they work phenomenally, whether it's a business relationship, a personal relationship, and they're not the three words that you think. Are you ready? Here are the three magic words of articulating. And articulating is all about saying these three words: name your needs. What do you need from me so that I can support you as a partner? And this goes beyond partnerships, of course. As Ian just said, a partnership is a team of two. But wherever you go, if you have that tradition in place, name your needs, especially when things get hard. It is transformative because suddenly we're out of the zone of assumption. And to an extent, to your point, Karen, of values, very often my needs are going to reflect my values. And if I need to express my values, whose responsibility is it? Mine or the other person's? And because we make those assumptions, we think other people will know. But actually, when we have this principle in mind, we can start with this idea. Articulate, name your needs. And the values are probably going to come in there. They're also coming in at a different area, which we call agreements or chartering. And again, Ian is our go-to guy on this topic of chartering and agreements. I'll name my
Yeah,
Ian, you continue because you're the one for this.
yeah, and it's something that Marie and I did very early on. And Corin, to your question, um, whilst the one plus one equals 11 is about leveraging each other's strengths, it's impossible in a mismatch of values. So in so many ways, the one plus one 11 is not possible if there isn't a values alignment. And this goes all the way back, and many of you will know, like Jim Collins' Good to Great and other aspects. And the message of that one, and this is now building a bigger team or an organization, is getting everybody in the right seat on the bus is aligning strengths with tasks, right? But allowing people on the bus is a values issue. And maybe it's not a bus. Maybe your idea of your business is just a partnership. Maybe it's a two-seater sports car. But you cannot get in that sports car and do this journey together if you haven't got an alignment on values, because that is the trumping criteria. And I'll give you a simple example. I've done a whole lot of work recently for a very large multi-business corporate in South Africa. And one of the things that they realized is they didn't have these common values and this common culture that they were trying to build. So they articulated all of this. And then the question came up. I was asked, I did this big group session with the top 170 executives of the organization. Actually, Marie and I did that together. It was quite an event. But then afterwards, I was invited on my own to come in and just speak to the exco of this group of companies. And one of the things I challenged them on is I said, what's going to happen if you have somebody who's performing and delivering results, but they're actually violating these values? What are you going to do about it? And they said, actually, we have some cases of that already. And they realized that to not take action tells everybody that the values don't matter, and to take action is very critical. And I'm so glad I haven't mentioned any names here, but there was one person in the room of that executive exco meeting that I just realized was not aligned. And then we saw a news headline about a month later that they were no longer in the business. And that was just fascinating. So the values are that important. But otherwise, they don't match. They don't mean a thing. And to me, it's that prerequisite is, are we aligned? And by the way, if somebody's not aligned, it's not about, okay, well, you're out. It's kind of going, what could you do to align your values with our values? And if we don't articulate what our values are, you can't even go there. And so that was something that Marie and I had to do really early on, is define a common purpose and common values, what we actually valued and honored in each other, and what we were trying to achieve. And I think that has had phenomenal power to see us through. That common purpose, common values discussion has liberated the ability for us to team around strengths and weaknesses.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Ian and Marie. Very insightful. And Karen saying that I love the bus analogy. Awesome. Then I want to ask another question since we are on conflict. Do you two ever fight? And how do you guys handle the differences and disagreements?
Who gets to take this question?
Yeah. That's what I'm leaving a little bit of open air there.
Actually, I'd like to start. I'd like to start. The answer is obviously yes. But I would like to just start because of what we've just been talking about. And that is that I would say most of the conflicts that we've ever had have been one of three issues or a combination. In fact, often it's all of them. The one is not being true to self. You know, the moment that we're trying to fit in instead of belong, you know, belong is where you're accepted for who you are and you are being true to who you are. Fitting in is you trying to change who you are to fit the other person. That is a disaster for the two of us. And we have recent case study of that. Then the the second one is this naming of needs. If we cannot articulate and name our needs, is another absolutely critical one. And the other one, I believe, is that we're all aware that we work in progress and we're on a growth journey. The moment that my growth journey stalls, it starts to impact the relationship. So I just wanted to put those three things out there before we even talk about what is functional conflict and how can we do that. So yeah.
That's awesome. Of course, it would be very dishonest of me not to disagree here because your question was, Chris, do you two ever fight? Ian said yes, and I would actually say no, we have actually never fought. However, we have disagreed and we have had conflict. We've actually never ever had an ugly fight. Is that right? I
Yeah.
don't think
Yeah,
it's
that's
ever
true.
got ugly, but I would agree with Ian definitely on the point that it's when we violated these principles, which was either not naming a need, not following the agreement that we set up at the beginning. And to an extent, that serves as proof of the validity of these principles, because everything that has gone right has been basically following the principles. And then when things do not go well, then it's when we violate the principles. So we're very good guinea pigs. We are eating our own dog food here. This is definitely, these 12 principles are principles that we have been using for really phenomenal results. And then I'd love to get into this idea of functional conflict, because actually conflict is one of our principles as well. And the idea is that this conflict can really be functional. It can be respectful. It can be caring. It can even be loving. Because when we don't have that, that is how you build a volcano that is one day going to explode. And it might explode between the people. Very often, what we see in a workplace and even in a relationship is that that explosion happens inside somebody's body. Your health gets affected by the things that you're not articulating. So, are you naming your needs? Are you making your agreements on who does what? How do we work together on that? And really continuing the connection. Another principle we have is appreciation. Are we appreciating each other? Because when we truly appreciate someone else, we appreciate them for what they bring, but also for what they do not bring. And we're willing to understand that you can't bring this particular light without casting this particular shadow. There, I got the shadow on my face, even so, just to demonstrate. So this idea of following these principles really, really works. And then the idea of functional conflict is to actually verbalize before there is a volcano that explodes in a way that is respectful, in a way that is caring, in a way that has, Ian has these descriptions that he speaks about curiosity and candor. And I think even creativity comes into this. So, can we be curious about the thing that we disagree on? So, you heard a little bit now about our Egg 3 leadership assessment and the focus report that has now come out of that. That is some of the finest work that we have done. And I feel in my career, elements of it are a pinnacle for me. It's really, really exciting to look at this. And more importantly, it's nice to say I made this nice thing. It's so much more important when somebody comes to you and says, it's like you were reading my mind. This explains so much. And that is what the assessment is now doing. And we're really proud of that. But we would not have got there if we'd agreed on everything. Because when we agree, or when we disagree, and we do it respectfully, and we have this functional conflict, we actually come to a point where we can end up with something much, much, much better than what anybody could have done on their own. Once again, 1 + 1 = 11. Ian, I'm sure there's a lot you have to say about functional conflict. Do you agree?
No, I didn't. So no, I think you've actually articulated it beautifully. I don't think I really do have a lot to add other than, I mean, other than I could go into a 1 hour lecture on it, but maybe a 1 day workshop on it. But the principles are exactly that. We want to practice candor. And we want to practice curiosity. So, can we state our position and be curious about the other person's position at the same time? And that is, and I think that a great example of that was with multiple facets of developing this new report for the Egg 3. It was just, we had to go through those iterations. And I want to just emphasize that one thing that Marie said, and that is that the goal should always be that we're going to come up with something better than our positions when we were in conflict, in disagreement. Because what basically happens is a person typically gets quite attached to a particular idea, and we've experienced this, both of us, incredibly recently, even in the last couple of weeks, where there is clearly an energy, there's an attachment or whatever to this particular idea. And then the other person has an attachment to their idea. But it's when we can state that, then we can understand each other's ideas and what's driving the concept. In fact, we had one of these yesterday about the assessment we're going to show you at the end of the session here, because what happened was that Marie ventured and said, but hang on, she doesn't believe or like this particular wording on this particular part of the assessment. And it's a fairly minor thing in the bigger context, by the way. And I then countered with, but this and the way it's scored and all the rest of it. And then it kind of went back and forth. And then we went, oh, hang on, maybe it's just the solution. And then we debated the wording change and eventually got to a place where we went, oh, but that addresses my feeling and it addresses her feeling, and it's better than we would have had otherwise.
Oh,
Absolutely. And before we hand over to our umpire, my goodness, you're a saint. There is something else that happens here. Many of you might have come across the beautiful little picture of the Japanese bowl with the crack that's sealed in gold, or a kintsugi. And kintsugi is the idea that when a precious piece of ceramic breaks, that you can then repair it with gold, which is more valuable. And what was broken is now not a piece of trash. It is now much more valuable than it was before. This happens both to the work that we do together when we work with functional conflict. And it also happens to the relationship, because there is this little bit of friction. But if we can resolve a conflict in a way that is respectful, we come out stronger as individuals and stronger as a collective. And once again, that applies to every kind of team, not just a one-on-one partnership, and beyond business and in life.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. So I have to say, guys, your answers to the questions have been very insightful, and I think has been very well put out. So I just want to say thank you and well done. But with today's life, balance is quite a big thing for everyone, and that hits me onto the next question, which is, with everything involved, how do you balance work and life?
This is for Ian because he's
Yeah,
going to say,
I was just about to say, Ian, this one's on you.
Well, I don't want to take credit for this, but I believe that the Dalai Lama was once asked about work-life balance, and he said there is only one thing, life, and work is part of life. But yes, we do need to address our needs, and this is a lot about naming needs. And one of our principles, and this might surprise everybody, but one of our principles for a relationship at work is independence. And I think a lot of wherever Marie and I have gone wrong, or in fact, any relationship I've ever had in my life, has been where I have felt a loss of independence or my partner has felt a loss of independence. It is absolutely vital that we understand that whilst 1 + 1 is 11, we are still one and one as well. Because if we kind of become this codependency, this merging of personality and time and everything, then we are not going to have work-life balance. We are going to find that we are depleted and so on. So for us, having time on our own is absolutely vital. Having time, we've each got our own tribes. Like I've got my best friend and Marie has her family and people and this thing of allowing us to. So I'll give you a simple example, and this is now about my best friend. My best friend and I have been best friends. In fact, I think it's this month for 30 years. So
Wow.
since we met, 30 years since we met. And we get together every single week. So for example, we would typically, in fact, he's coming around tonight for dinner. So we're getting together every week. And one of the things is that in his marriage, okay, him coming to spend an evening with me once a week, his wife doesn't consider it a loss. She considers it a win because she can't meet all his needs. And I think one of the things that's absolutely critical for us to understand in every relationship is the other person cannot meet all of our needs. They may be able to meet some of them, they may be able to meet quite a high percentage sometimes, but they cannot meet all of our needs because it's just too much pressure to put onto the partnership. And so this to me is absolutely critical that we have space to be independent and space to be connected with our own tribe, and that then is enriching and sustains. So, Marie, maybe you can add.
That perspective is so valuable. And for the people that are listening, that are business owners or who want to start a business or who are really building a passion business, when we really love what we do, it's actually really difficult to turn it off because we have those 3 a.m. inspirations and we want to go there. We don't want to say, well, I'll start this at 8 a.m. tomorrow when it's not like being on the payroll and you check out at the end of the day. And I think that dedication and commitment and excitement is something that we should really tap. Even so, it is important to go and take that time. I mean, we hear this so often for ourselves, but within the partnership, especially if you get along like a house on fire, or your friends or your life partners as well, it becomes even more important to go and spend time with other people because you need to enrich and refresh that gene pool of what you are together. And you want to retain your broader identity. Otherwise, I see, Chris, you were joking in the chat about becoming not 1 + 1, but 1 + 0. You can become 0 + 0 or 0.5 + 0.5 if you are not maintaining a whole life of your own. So I think Ian and I have experienced this um, very richly. Every time that we go to our own tribes, Ian can go and do the things that are interesting to him, or meet with his friends or the guys, or a different environment. And I can tap inspiration from other sources. We come back and we have fresh ideas. We become weak when we're only those two. In the context of a love relationship, the philosopher Khalil Gibran would say, he spoke about the two pillars that need to hold up a structure. If there are two pillars and they're so close together, the structure will fall down. So our 1 plus 1 equals 11 does need to be distant enough that we can stand alone. Otherwise, we have nothing to bring.
Great explanation. Thanks for that. Guys, so I've got a few more questions left. If you have any questions, you guys are more than welcome to leave them in chat, or we can just unmute at the end. But leading closer to the end of our session, I want to ask, what is the ultimate outcome of a partnership? Marie, this one's on you.
Well, by this definition, it would be 1 plus 1 equals 11. The terminology that we use, and if you look into the Sun relational blueprint that we have, we actually work in 3 spheres. And the first sphere is about yourself. And with those spheres, there are also quadrants. So one of the quadrants is independence when we are dealing with self. The second sphere is about the plus one, when we bring in another person, it's our relationship with the other. And there we go from independence to interdependence. Now, the question is, when we get to the greater level of what this partnership can be, the equals 11, what comes after independence and interdependence? Well, we believe that 11 is transcendence. It's where we become a whole lot more than just who we are on our own, or even who we are with the two of us together. Something far greater becomes possible. And again, in the context of business, for the founders and the entrepreneurs who are here, that is when we really start looking at, oh, well, the truth is we actually are looking at building a business that will sustain and grow itself and employ more people. That's what entrepreneurship is, after all. In the business context, that is our transcendence. 1 plus 1 equals 11.
I love that. Ian, is there anything you'd like to add on to that?
Not a lot. I just think that one of the things that um, the scenario of how do we get to this place, and I don't think we've talked that much about it, but it's part of the agreements, and that is common purpose. And I think one of the things that has been a foundation for where Marie and I have thrived as a partnership has been where we have this clarity of why we are together. What is the purpose? The purpose is our mutual growth, our stimulating that, making an impact on the world. A lot of clarity around that. And one of the things that I don't think I'm speaking out of turn by saying this, but I think we're all very aware of you know, the unique relationship that Mike and Lundy have. But it's fascinating that Lundy has shared with me a couple of things around this thing of we need our independence as well. And what she shared there is this thing of that, Mike has a love for rock music, but she's an ex-ballet dancer, and it's not that she doesn't like the rock, but she gets tired of it. And she needs to go somewhere to her room to listen to classical music sometimes, and I think this is part of this thing of this understanding that through the independence and the interdependence, we can achieve transcendence. And I don't think anybody here would deny that they have achieved levels of transcendence where there are things that they each bring to a common purpose that is transformative, that actually has changed lives forever. And I think that really is what that's all about.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for being here. The last question, well, it's not a question actually. It's more of a find out how to. For the listeners that are listening and the people that we have live, how can we delve deeper into the insights of this topic? Sorry.
We really would love to support anybody who has ever wondered how to make a partnership work, or anybody who is in a partnership that is struggling with these 12 principles, we really believe they need to be shared with the world. So we share these principles in a blueprint that is a visual so that you can actually work through these principles. You could literally put it on your wall and look at it when things are going wrong. Start there. There's a lot more to be said about all of them, but we have a summary of them in a PDF. And that is what we call the Sun Relational Blueprint. And it's the 12 principles of relationship at work. You'll see a QR code in the background. And I'll also share in the chat the link that you can use. It's likemorpheus.com/12 principles blueprint. The 12 is 1, 2 principles blueprint. And there we are. We'd love to give you a chance to download that. It's completely free. There's no obligation or strings attached there. And it gives you a chance to go and try the principles for yourself. And we'd love to hear how they're working for you.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And guys, I just want to say thank you again for being with us this week. Really insightful. So much detail that you guys have shared. Really appreciate it. I see chats just amazed. We don't have any chats going on. All great.
I just want to quickly add something.
Yeah, please.
Sorry, Chris, to speak over you now. But with that assessment, with that blueprint, there is a link to an assessment that we've put together, and that assessment does ask 36 questions. So, but they're quite quick ones. You can give your intuitive response that will kind of talk about your current state in these 12 areas, in the 3 spheres that we've spoken about, and we've even got something 4 different quadrants that the model, the blueprint applies to. So go to look at the blueprint, download it, and then maybe look at the assessment if you want to. And it's just going to give you a very simple report that'll tell you where you're doing in each of those. There are actually 19 areas, so
Wow.
it'll cover them all.
Very, very detailed. Yeah, for those that are listening offline, I'll be sharing the link in the bio or the description. So you can find the link there and connect with Ian Hatton on LinkedIn and Marie-Thérèse Leroux on LinkedIn as well, if you're not already. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you again, guys, for being our guests this week. Really appreciate it. And for those that are here live, really appreciate you guys being here. And then also, of course, the offline listeners. You guys are all amazing. And it's April Fool's Day today. We didn't do anything for April Fool's. So it would have been a no-show, but we're glad we did the session. So I hope everyone has a great week ahead and April Fool's ahead. And we'll see you guys again next week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.